to go from one place to other through a wormhole, where you first have to, go into a black hole, which essentially will rip you off.
If you are someone who is interested into tech or someone who has a keen interest on knowing what goes around 3000 light years from us, this video will be for you. This video will give you some insights about what are the next big techs that are coming up. This video will help you find those paths if you are interested into them. Do consider watching the whole video. If you like the video, give it a thumbs up. Comment down what are your thoughts, and if ever you happen to come across some of those conspiracy theories that we have discussed. So, welcome to the episode 1 of Sharmaji Ka Adda. Hope you like the video, and till then, you can enjoy the intro. हेलो एवरीवन. सो आज हमारे साथ हैं श्रेयस बापट, अंडरग्रेड ऑफ IIT मंडी इन द बैच ऑफ 2020. सो वेरी वेलकम टू दिस पॉडकास्ट. हाउ आर यू?
Hi, Vaibhav. Yeah, doing good and बढ़िया चल रहा है सब.
सो कैसा लगा, मतलब 2020 में बिना फेयरवेल के पास आउट हो जाना?
It was a nightmare in the very beginning, but जैसे जैसे चीजें आगे गई,
फिर तो
then
एडजस्ट
we
करना
realized
पड़ता है
कि
ना,
ठीक है, मतलब
सह लेंगे
हाँ,
थोड़ा.
नहीं मतलब फिर वो आदत हो गई इस चीज की कि
हाँ,
this is-
मतलब कभी आज तक हमने ऐसा वो सोचा तो होगा ही नहीं ना कि हमारा एक सेम पूरा ऑनलाइन निकल जाएगा. आपका तो चलो एक सेम निकला, यहाँ 3 सेम ऑनलाइन निकल गए. कोई कुछ है ही नहीं, सबके सीजी आ रही हैं अलग ही लेवल पे.
किसी ने कभी बताया नहीं था ऐसा भी हो सकता है.
ऐसा भी हो सकता है. इवन बिजनेस एम्पायर्स बन जाएंगे सिर्फ ऑनलाइन के ऊपर. तो काफ़ी सही था मतलब. सो कोविड में और क्या क्या मतलब ऐसा चेंज हुआ लाइफ में? कुछ नया किया हो? मतलब शेफ्स तो सभी बने थे, सबने कुछ ना कुछ कुकिंग
मैं
करी,
शेफ
उसके
नहीं बना.
अलावा कुछ? अच्छा, शेफ नहीं बने? दैट्स एन कुछ अलग ही हो गया ये तो. क्योंकि अभी तक जिससे भी बात हुई मेरी, सब बोल रहे हैं हाँ हम तो शेफ बन ही गए थे, कुछ ना कुछ तो क्विजीन निकाल ही दी थी अपनी अपनी.
मैं हाँ इनिशियली मैंने फर्स्ट जॉब ज्वाइन की थी अपनी 2020 में, और स्टार्टअप भी चल रहा था, सो इतना टाइम नहीं मिलता था शेफ वेफ बनने का. बट
बिजी.
हाँ मतलब मैंने काफी कुछ पिकअप किया, ऐसी चीजें जो मैं पहले नहीं करता था, और ऐसी कई चीजें स्टार्ट की जो मैं पहले सोचता भी नहीं था करने का. फाइनेंस मैंने पहले मैं सब कभी देखा नहीं था, सो इट वाज
अच्छा, तो एट द एंड इट ऑल
काफी
मैटर्स, व्हाट ऑल मैटर्स इज मनी. उसको मैनेज करना पहले सीखते हैं.
एंड ऑफ डे लाइफ का ट्रुथ यही है कि it's just money which matters. मतलब you must have that much कि if you have some emergency, if you have something to do, तुम्हें रात में लगता है कि हाँ ये चीज करनी है, you should be able to do that. तो वो चीज एक है जो मतलब it's the hard truth. मतलब सब बोलेंगे पैसे के पीछे मत भागो, but then हर कोई पैसे के पीछे ही भागता है.
पीछे ही भागता है.
हमारी सारी चीजें, हमारी जॉब्स वही होती है, हम जहाँ काम करते हैं वही होते हैं, हमारे मीडिया वही होता है, हमारे पॉलिटिशियंस वही होते हैं, हमारे
IIT से पास आउट हो
हर
फर्क नहीं
कोई.
पड़ता. एट द एंड ऑफ द डे फर्क ये पड़ता है भाई कितने लाख का पैकेज मिला है.
IIT से पास आउट हो, ये मतलब आई थिंक ये बहुत बड़ा मिथ है मेरे हिसाब से.
हाँ.
कि सो मैं भी जिस कंपनी में काम कर रहा था, वहां पर इवन द फाउंडर वाज लाइक ही वाज अ ड्रॉप आउट, और ऐसे कई सारे लोग थे जो बहुत ज्यादा अच्छा टेक्निकल नॉलेज रखते थे एज कम्पेयर टू अ लॉट ऑफ फोक्स फ्रॉम IITs to IITs. they were dropouts. तो आई थिंक ये बहुत बड़ा मिथ है कि IIT से होने से बहुत अच्छा पैकेज लगता है.
बहुत अच्छा
ऐसा
पैकेज
कुछ
मिल
भी नहीं
जाता है. हाँ
आई
वो तो
थिंक
सही
मतलब
बात है।
आईआईटी में होने के बाद ऐसा होता है कि जस्ट बिकॉज हमारे आसपास सब काफी अच्छा कर रहे होते हैं तो हमें लगता है कि हाँ
पीयर
हमें अच्छा
प्रेशर में
करना
कुछ ना
चाहिए।
कुछ निकल ही जाता है वहाँ पे।
हाँ, वो एक एनवायरनमेंट है बस जो विच नर्चर्स यू टू डू समथिंग गुड,
Even that
बट
environment
अदरवाइज
also plays a important role when we are preparing as well, क्योंकि हम जितने अच्छे पीयर ग्रुप में होते हैं हम उतना अच्छा करने की कोशिश करते ही हैं, वेन एवर वी आर लाइक 11th 12th या फिर अगर ड्रॉप कर रहा है तो तब भी।
हाँ किसी भी केस में मतलब आई थिंक एनवायरनमेंट इम्पोर्टेंट है।
हाँ
कुछ भी कर
एनवायरनमेंट
रहे हो
इज
तो
इम्पोर्टेंट।
यू शुड हैव दैट वाइब कि सामने वाला भी कुछ कर रहा है तो मुझे भी कुछ करना चाहिए। मतलब अब कोई यूजुअली एक हर्ड मेंटालिटी होती है, तो तुम देखोगे कि जितने भी लोग होते हैं जो कुछ उल्टे सीधे भी काम करते हैं कॉलेजेस में, there's a certain group which does that, always ऐसा ही होता है, हमेशा ऐसा ही होता है। So this herd thing always exists, or this exists in positive things also or negative things also. So
नेगेटिव थिंग्स आल्सो,
एक एक इंसान who handles their finances very well, you'll find that all of their friends handle their finances very well.
फाइनेंशियल
और एक
वेरी
इंसान
वेल।
and then there'll be a group जो जिसको कुछ नहीं पता and the whole group will know nothing. So it's like that, तो herd mentality होती है and मतलब थोड़ा बहुत पॉजिटिव reinforcement हेल्प करता है। So in that sense IITs
दैट्स
काफी हेल्पफुल होते हैं, बट ऐसे
in providing
सोचोगे
that
कि
infrastructure so that we all can grow as a person, also as a
हाँ
professional।
मतलब
मतलब जिस टाइप का, मतलब ये तो है कि एक कॉलेज वो पीयर्स अगर प्रोवाइड करता है जो चीज़ें कर रहे हैं, तो फिर वो अपने आप ही वो हो जाता है कि हम भी कुछ करते हैं, कुछ तो नया करते हैं। Also, now let's get to another interesting part of this podcast. And most of you would not know, but Shreyas is also a big fan of what's happening 3000 light years away from us and what's really going on, be it an event of that has already happened 3000 years ago, but he's still interested in it. So, how did that begin? How did your quest for what's going on within the space, what's going on within something that's very far away from us, how did that really start to build up as a kid, or was it as when you entered into the premises of IIT?
no, so it was when I was a kid, and I think
Hmm.
that's the coolest thing which can happen to a kid. Um, when you're a kid, you are so your curiosity graph is like a declining one, right? As you move ahead, it happens to everyone, no matter however one claims that they are curious and all of that. The level of curiosity you have in your childhood is like exponentially higher than what you have right now, and that's what happened. So I joined some NGO called Aryabhat, and there I just realized that okay, a lot of things that are being taught in my school are not really, you know, the reality is far apart. And
Hmm.
then
Hmm.
I started reading up things, and then you see cool stuff in telescopes, and then you wonder what's the meaning of the life. And yeah, those questions came to me when I was like in my 10th class or 9th class, and then that's what it is like. Once you get into that space and you're like very curious about everything, then it's a space where you don't
Y-
even the best people out there don't know how things are working.
How
And
things are working, and
yeah,
like it's just speculations and observations, how I see it as.
it's speculations, which are those speculations are extremely smart, and then we do some very smart experiments to verify those very smart speculations,
Hmm.
which then we think that okay, this might be correct, but then at some point someone else shows up us a bigger picture, and then we realize okay, what we were looking at was a very smaller version of what the reality was, and then we try to figure that out, and then it just gets it just gets bigger and bigger every time, and
Yeah.
there's no stopping to it, and
And
that's why it's
so
like
many
pretty
smart
interesting.
people working on smart things going out around, and definitely smart people like you will be interested in that, right?
I wouldn't call myself smart as compared to
that,
those people.
that's as
So
compared to those, okay, then we can, but Yeah, as compared to me, you're definitely way ahead. So
I
coming
cannot say
back,
that either. I, yeah.
so like, what is one of those interesting features within space that you think a 14-15-year-old should know, so that they could go ahead and start searching for more answers? I know there are more examples like that which can be very, very interesting to see within our own lives that they continue, including the human existence per se. But what is that one thing in space which you really think a very naive person can also think about that, and then can get into what really space is? Because space is very vast and very, the most interesting part about space will be it's always expanding. So why is it expanding is a reason which,
It's not just expanding. It
there are
it
many things going
expands.
on. I'm just saying in a
It
very
starts.
naive sense.
So the expansion also accelerates, which is next
Hmm.
level stuff. So you can, so it's like you spill water on a table. It does kind of expand, like it lowers outside. Now that's intuition, right? That this will happen if something started from, let's say, okay, let's say there's a bomb which you just, there's a Diwali cracker, like,
Hmm.
there's a bomb
Hmm.
of Diwali. You just, uh, when it expands, right? It does, sure, it expands, but then it stops at some point. The thing
Hmm.
about the whole thing is that
Universes.
this doesn't stop at any time, and it keeps on expanding faster than ever, and that's just crazy. So, but that is difficult to uh, relate to. I think, like, you need to understand a lot of physics in order to understand how they came to know that the whole thing is expanding. What That's what dark energy is, and then there's something much more relatable, uh, which I feel like kids. So I got very interested in that, and I have some theories about it. So if you think about it, when you spin a, okay, you tie let's say a golf ball to a string, and then you start rotating it, right? Then when you increase the size of the string, rotating it at the same angular velocity, that is the angle it covers in the same time,
Same time.
right?
Hmm.
Now, for it to cover the same angle when the string is, let's say, 1 meter, it covers a very small displacement. But when the string
Hmm.
is very big, it covers a
Very
very
big.
big
It covers.
displacement in the
Yeah.
same time.
Yeah.
So now,
Yeah.
when you think about it, when the farther you get, if you want to rotate it at the same angular velocity,
You need more
the the
force.
the exactly this, it's essentially
Uh,
moving with a very high speed in, if you go linear with the frame. So now it's impossible if you start with a lot of golf balls which have different lengths of swings, and you start rotating it, the smallest one
they
will
will
complete the
just,
revolution
yeah,
much faster.
yeah.
And that's what
You
happens
cannot
in our
handle
solar
that.
system.
Uh,
Correct. That's what happens in our solar system. Mercury has the smallest
Radius,
revolution period.
revolution
Uh,
period. Yeah.
Correct. So, and then as you go far into Jupiter and Saturn, they move in the whole orbit much slower than Earth, although their velocity is quite a lot. But the angle that they cover in that whole orbit is slower than what Earth does, right? And now when you observe galaxies, they have shapes. Now, think about it. How can a galaxy have shape? If its inner part moves at a very high speed and the lower outside of it moves at a very low speed, just putting it out in a very non-physics terms. But think about it. You have a whirlpool, which is the inner part of it is rotating at like extraordinary speeds, and the outside part of it is not rotating at extraordinary speeds. The shape will never persist. But
Yeah.
there's a spiral galaxy, then there's a disc-shaped galaxy, and that's
Hmm.
insane. How can those
No.
galaxies
Okay.
maintain that similarity, this symmetry? How can you have symmetrical galaxy at all? and then you get to something like this, something which is dark matter, and then everything starts getting like very funny.
Very interesting.
I
And
personally believe dark matter and dark energy is this is the theory I had since my childhood. So I believe that dark matter and dark energy are the real gods, because we are not supposed to know anything about the gods, right? And essentially, dark matter and dark energy is what driving the world. So
also, a very ancient text, I think you would have also heard about it, that it says, in Indian culture, that ब्रह्मा का एक दिन जो होता है वो अर्थ के कई हजार सालों के बराबर होता है. So, like,
I'm not
I
sure about
heard
that.
this, huh?
I haven't heard this. Like I'm
It
not
was like,
a lot into mythology and all. So
या इट वाज सेड कि ब्रह्मा का एक साल है शायद 1 लाख वर्ष के बराबर. सो देयर वाज अ पर्सन हु वाज जस्ट डिकोडिंग दिस. I don't remember exactly which video I was really seeing, but I have heard this analogy more often times. So what he exactly said was, imagine a planet like we take 1 year as revolving around one sun. Our own sun, we consider it as 1 year. So imagine a planet that's so big that it takes 1 lakh years, according to Earth, to travel that particular sun. There would be some planet that's going on. And maybe
okay,
from that, the concept of aliens would have arrived, that aliens do exist. Also, it can happen that those people were so powerful that humans on Earth started considering them as gods. That ancient connect towards aliens, and that
I
there
have
was some
I have very
some
contradictory
conspiracy theory
theories to
always
this.
going on.
uh, I have very very different theories than this, so I don't know
So
what to answer
there are
this.
n number of theories that floats around, many things that going around within the space, which also leads me to my next question. As there are so many theories going around within space, so much investment going around within this sector, be it SpaceX, that's a particularly a private firm that's running their own things, be it NASA, be it ISRO. Why do you think so much amount of investment is going around in this particular sector? How does it really impact a normal human being? Like, कई लोग होते हैं जो सिंपल ये चीज़ सोचते हैं, यार बाहर क्या चल रहा है, हमें क्या मतलब है, हम तो जी रहे हैं ना यहाँ पर, क्या दिक्कत है, बाहर जो
That's a
चल रहा है चल रहे
very
दो.
nice question. Yeah.
So why do you really
Okay.
think that this thing really needs to continue to ensure human existence? Because the core ideology with which they are working is human existence. How are we sustaining if the earth collapses? Why are we really going on into different dimensions and searching for different things and proving our own theories?
Okay. So this seems like a very complicated question, but it's very easy to answer. You didn't have GPS before the space agencies did that, and now think your life without GPS. Can you? And this is not just it. There are like 100 different examples about this, and then this whole space exploration is just one part of it. There's uh, exponentially higher amount of money flowing into the you know the
This
research part
particular
of it,
sector.
where we try to prove our theories. A lot of stuff goes around in astrophysics, all of that stuff. A lot of money is being put into it. And if you now think about it, uh, just just before you know 2018, I think 2018 or 2017, we didn't know how gold is formed. We had no idea on how all these heavy metals are formed, and we came to know how it is formed when we observed two neutron stars merging, and we saw that okay, this is how heavy metals are formed. And now, why you would naturally think, why do I need to know how was gold formed? You never know, right? What? Yeah,
What's the
some
next
days
big
back,
thing that's coming for you?
correct. You never know. You never knew that lithium was so important. That batteries one day would rule the world. You never knew. it's important for you to know stuff. It's important for you to know stuff to be better at things. That's how we develop. If you stop searching for things, then you are essentially living whatever you have. Think about it like this, right? You have a working house, and you stop doing anything. You stop changing anything in it. Things get old. You stop, even if you don't upgrade your phone every 2 years, then you are living in an old world. If you don't upgrade the software inside your phone every 2 years, every month rather, then you are missing out on something, and
Something,
that
yeah.
something sometimes can make like huge money,
Hmm.
and not just
Apps
huge
don't
money.
work with updates. Same can happen with a
Yeah,
particular human life.
correct. You don't know what's going to come out of it. That's why
Hmm.
we do it. Maybe someday something will, like GPS, something will come out of it.
Also, to
So
make more sense, I would also like to add an example to it. We were able to, really cure COVID, or at least try to find a vaccine, because we had started developing vaccine for the SARS virus, which was for the same
correct.
family. Imagine we never worked on SARS thinking chalo hai chhod do. We would have never started to, such rapidly develop technologies that can really come and cure COVID. So that's something which that curious souls really keeps humanity growing. That's what the whole
If you
system
think
of
about it,
this.
we are able to distribute vaccines pretty well, and that's also because at some point we wanted to cure smallpox, and we know how to do this because we once did it. And there are a lot of countries which are struggling with this because they don't know how to vaccinate people at this scale.
Okay, correctly.
And this all happened because there was someone who wanted to cure smallpox, and they invested a lot of money in curing smallpox, and they use instruments which uh, you know which uses things developed by indirectly by people working about in space, or people working at quantum levels. So we know everything about our life, right? We mostly know how things function at a scale of humans, and maybe a little bit bigger than that. What we don't know is how things function at micro levels, and how things function at extremely macro levels.
Macro
So
levels.
uh,
Hmm.
inventions can only happen at two ends now. Either they happen at extremely micro levels, which is like
Hmm.
you're talking about quantum
Quantum.
computers. So you
Hmm.
have reached a certain computing power. Now you're going to move towards quantum computers. Or it happens at extremely macro levels. Now you understand how gold was created. And that was just this is just a weird thing. We all have gold. We never knew how it even
How
exists.
it even existed, and
Right?
why does it
Because
have so much of value
that's a
right
whole
now?
different story. But if you
Hmm.
think
Hmm.
you have a for the people who know this, but you have a fusion graph, right? It peaks at iron, so you can never get past iron on based on just on fusion. And we just so think about it. If you can't get past iron, how was even anything else created?
What was the next thing that can go par iron, and that can help us sustain even more? What How much our dependency on iron is? That's the basic thing कि हम
Now we
कितने
would
लिमिट्स को, हाँ,
yeah
हम
now we
कितनी
would
लिमिट्स
know
को
how
पुश कर
to
रहे हैं.
do that.
Hmm. Also, connecting to stars, you also had a conference, right? Through Python to the stars.
That was a title of my talk.
Yeah, that was the title of your talk. So, what was exactly on?
Yeah, so as I said, I was interested in all of this stuff since I was a kid, and then I came to IIT, and then we code everything out, right? So I got introduced to computers. So I knew computers, but I never knew what they can do, right? You run Windows, you can run music, you can play games, but what what power it has, I only came to know about that in my first year. And then I realized that okay, if this is something which is there, then why not automate things for my own astronomy things, like finding stars. I started with things like finding which stars are up in the night at any given point of time. And then I realized, okay, it's much more than that. So I
Much more
realized
things
that
can be done.
how computing has actually changed the whole astronomy, astrophysics world. And then yeah, then I started working in it and contributing to several projects, etc.
This also makes me remember one instance where NASA's calendar was a few minutes or a few hours ahead or behind, which also disrupted many softwares who used to have kundalis. If you remember, they used to many pundits used to calculate kundalis with that, and then one day NASA came up with an update that we are this lagging with respect to time or something, and then everything that existed had to really reshuffle. So that is what importance of what a reference is, because we are just keeping things as a reference. Now if
That's
that reference changes, we are going to change everything with that. That's just a very naive
that's
example, but many things go around in the same fashion. Also, with this particular example as well, that reference changes and things happening around, what do you see as the next big techs that are going to come up? Like 5 years or 10 years before, we never knew that we would be having live classes, or we would be having a whole setup of businesses being built upon online platform that are completely virtual. There is no office with that. What do you think is the next big thing that's coming within tech that you can smell?
of course one of it is blockchain for sure. The other is, so we have done a lot of AI, but we have not perfected it yet.
Perfected it,
And
yeah.
yeah, so we are yet to solve a very big problem, that is our AI is dependent on the data that we give, and the data that we give can be, you know,
Manipulated.
very biased,
Hmm.
I would say.
Biased. Hmm. Hmm.
Your AI sometimes fails to detect a short person, or your AI sometimes fails to detect a person with a race, all of that stuff. And something in this domain would come sometime, I hope so, and then we would start perceiving this whole thing as something completely different, and that thing is basically explainable AI. Like, people are trying to figure out how AI works, and if they do, that is the whole thing. We don't know how AI works, how deep learning works. If they do, then it's going to change how everything works for us. We are going to build much more sophisticated models. We are going
Hmm.
to make much
Hmm.
more sophisticated stuff. But about blockchain, I feel just for the future of crypto, the sheer amount of computing that goes into miner Bitcoin, let's say, I personally feel at some point we'll realize that it's, way too much. Maybe it will go down, but it will still be the one cool thing that the humanity did at some point.
Also, blockchain, how I also perceive it as, is that since it is very unregulated, it also poses a existential crisis on the government per se as well, because at last they want to have a final say, right? And if there is something they
So
just are not able to control, how do you really think they're going to manage with that?
that's the thing. Governments will never lose control. So they'll always want to have control, and they'll somehow regulate it. So it's possible, regulation of all these cryptocurrencies is possible. And it's so possible that we can actually track uh, where the money went, how the
Where
money
the
went
money went
from.
and how the money went,
Yeah,
who bought it. Yeah, that
you exactly. You can track
too
everything.
much
So
ambiguity also fears humanity as well, because things are too ambiguous in that there are privacy securities that are going around which are necessary for a person per se, but then the test case which we are keeping right now is a very positive test case, where it could be a very destructive test case as well.
I think at some point, a lot of us have started realizing that already. earlier we used to mine bitcoins on our personal computers, and that was just a fun thing that we could do. These days you need high performance clusters,
High performance
multiple
clusters
data
to do
centers
that, yeah.
running just for mining of bitcoins. Now think about it.
What they do is
What
they
is a
just
bit?
alter the codes, and then just to do that computing more faster, they are just hiring hectares of
No.
land and
So
doing the computing.
essentially, when a transfer of a cryptocurrency happens, okay, you can think that every time a transfer happens, there's a computation that has to be done. So there's a problem that is solved in a computer to verify that transaction. So it's putting it out in very like naive terms right now. So you can think of it like every time you send someone a Bitcoin, which is really hard because it's very expensive these days. But if I send a
Send
Bitcoin
a
to you,
piece of it.
yeah, there'll be someone running a very difficult. There'll be some computer which will be solving a very difficult problem just to make sure that okay, I am sending the Bitcoin to you. And now think about it. This could have been avoided. It was possible not to do that computation. It was possible not to release that extra carbon dioxide. And all of that would sometime come to us, and this will probably happen at some time that, this is way too expensive.
Hmm.
And
Also,
that has started coming up. A lot of people are
a
actually
lot of
concerned
people
about
are
climate
actually opposing that, yeah.
conditions.
In Europe, it did happen, no? That the carbon dioxide level rose up to something that was not expected by the environmentalist.
I think I don't know. I think it happens many more times in India than somewhere in Europe. But yeah, I don't know about that.
New Delhi people can, or NCR people can relate very nicely. Also, the second thing that we discussed right now was AI. So, what if someday you come to know that you are an AI of a person that created you? The humans are AIs functioning.
Think of it, right? Think of it. AI, what we try to develop in deep neural networks is exactly replicating what our brain does.
Replicating what we are doing,
What our
and
brain,
yeah.
exactly what our brain does, and what we haven't achieved till now is essentially actually replicating what a brain does because it's so complex. And you can think of it like thousands and crores of models sitting on your head and doing calculations as you speak. You write a deep learning model to just um, you know wobble your head, and our brain naturally does it. So it's like it's just the same. We are just trying to replicate the brain, but
And
the whole
how
thing AI, I don't know. Even if we are some AI, we will never know. So I
how
don't
funny
think
is
I
it
care.
that the AIs are creating another AIs, whereas thinking about creators of their own. That's
Yeah.
just we doing that right now. So, do you really think that there could be a human inception going on, kind of thing, like something
Is
related
this
to human
is this
inception?
related? What
Hmm?
does inception mean in this case?
Inception means like something that has layers. Like you are in a dream, someone wakes you up,
Is this
and
related to the Inception movie somehow?
yeah.
I'll be disappointed to tell you that I haven't seen the movie.
So it is basically, let me just summarize it. It's basically that the life which we are living in right now can be someone's dream, right? Which can again be someone's dream, and the cycle goes on.
You can theoretically you can say anything. So so we have this thing called Russell's teapot. So there was a person named
Hmm.
Russell in early
Hmm.
50s, I think. What he said
Hmm.
was, if tomorrow I say that there's a teapot which is orbiting the sun between Earth and Mars, and which is so small that you can't even detect it using a
That
telescope,
can't even, yes.
there's no way that you can disprove this theory. And that's actually the case, right? You cannot say that there's no teapot. There
Interesting.
can be a teapot just
Hmm.
revolving the sun. So you can create
Same
as
thing
many
goes around
theories as
with
you want.
Schrodinger's cat experiment as well, that there are parallel worlds
So,
going around.
so that is still fine, right? That is still fine. That has some
Digestible.
science behind it. what I'm saying is you can create as many Russell's teapots as you like, and I wouldn't be able to disprove it, or I wouldn't be able to say that it's there. So
It's true. Correct.
you
Correct.
can
Correct.
imagine thousand things.
So, how do you really think that the domain which you went into, like Python and the stars, so how do you think computing along with the knowledge of space that we are having and the horizon that we are expanding, how do you think that things can evolve gradually and we'll be able to know more into it? Like, what are the real texts that are going around with this particular domain, with the space domain?
So it's like pretty cool, right? Recently we landed Linux on Mars, which was never the case. So essentially, what has landed on Mars was an effort of thousands of people who can probably never go to Mars, but and who can never contribute to going to Mars, right? Like going to something like NASA or something like a space agency is extremely difficult, and then being there and contributing to a mission like this is thousand times more difficult than getting into something like NASA. Now, what you essentially mean is essentially everyone who contributed to the Linux kernel have contributed in going to NASA and going to Mars, sorry,
Going
and
to Mars.
that's amazing. Now think of it, how small tools that so Linux was essentially one small tool earlier, which a person named Dennis Torvalds someday decided to write, and someday he decided that hey, why not just make it public and see what people think about it. And now that piece of software is actually sitting on Mars. That's incredible. And maybe there's some other person just like you and me, maybe sitting in the dorm room of our IIT Mandi and writing some piece of code, which one day he may not even about it.
Think
He may
about.
not even know. He or she may not even know about it, that they have created something extraordinary. And someone at, let's say, ISRO or NASA would take up that and say that, hey, this is a very nice utility that someone has built. Let me use that and
Let me
go
use it
to
and
Uranus
yeah.
or Neptune, and that would be next level stuff. And think about it, now you can essentially contribute to all these space explorations, which was impossible just 5 years back.
So that's really interesting as well as motivating कि कुछ तो करते रहो, क्या पता कुछ नया चीज़ निकल आए और वो आगे एक्सेलरेट हो जाए और तुम VIPs बन जाओ और मज़े ही मज़े हो. Also, let's come to our final topic of discussion that is also very interesting to me, perhaps. Have you seen the web series Dark?
I'll be honest with you here. I see things just because of peer pressure 90% of times. And
Same
then
here.
I see things, I forget what was there after 4 hours of seeing it. And
so
I
what
know that
exactly
sounds ridiculous, but
no,
I
no,
don't know what
it's
happened in that.
it's something that happens to me as well. I was a great within the peer pressure. I used to watch Sherlock Holmes and really got into it as to what the thought
So-
process is. Even had to pause different things to get into the technicality of what that person is actually thinking, and maybe after one day I would just forget what's really went through that particular episode.
So
And that's
this is my
something which
habit.
happens.
I enjoyed Sherlock Holmes a lot. When I say a lot, I actually mean a lot. I watched it myself without anyone telling me to do it, but next day I forget about it. So
Yeah.
it's just
So
I'm bad at these things.
I even do not remember the face of Jim Moriarty, so that could exactly suffix as to what I'm trying to say.
Honestly
So-
saying, that I just remembered that name when you said that, and I'm a huge fan of Sherlock. So now you can
so
even
that's
think at
that's
what
what even examples we are giving. So what's Dark basically talks about is a wormhole theory, that it has been said by many that space is a plain sheet of paper where like if you want an ant to go through that paper, so that ant has to cross that whole paper to go through that another end. Now suppose you are able to fold that paper in such a way that it comes close to that ant, so that the ant can directly go to that point within a second or something like that. So there are many theories that go around that we are able to create a hole in space, so that we are able to go front and back within the past. I don't know what's that equation and what's that theory is, just in a layman's term. So asking you to shower some knowledge upon this particular thing.
So me with a bunch of other friends, we actually wrote a code for doing just that. This whole concept of like having the space being a paper is highly, how would you say it, that isn't it like there's a weird concept which no one can explain, and then you put a very lame example to it. So it's just like
Like
that.
the rubber
It's
band
not,
theory, the plastic band theory of planets going around in a spiral, that proves it.
whatever that is, like it's a lame thing, right? It's not really how that happens. Space is not a paper. Uh, but yeah, I mean, there are a lot of theories who say just that, and none of them have been, even closely proved. You can simulate a wormhole, you can simulate that, but how does that work? I'm not sure. Uh, I don't even think that you can actually. Uh, that would be a very complex thing to do, right? To go from one place to other through a wormhole, where you first have to go into a black hole, which essentially will rip you off. So now, even if you are able to recreate, so even if somehow some quantum things happen and they recreate you on the other side, it won't really be you. Now that arises the question: what is you in you? And it's just like, it's very hypothetical theories going around. We know for sure there are black holes. That's something which we detected. Uh, we proved that black holes really exist, and we can actually see that. That was one of my major technical projects task. Also, you actually have a photograph of a black hole sitting in the middle of a galaxy now, right? So we
Yeah.
know that black holes exist, but wormholes and all of this stuff is, again,
The
it's
same thing that
I
happened with the Philadelphia
me
experiment, in
saying
which the controversy or the conspiracy in which people were burned and something like that happened, and so
no,
that's what
not
it's going
even
on.
that. I don't think so that is the case. But the thing is that, you know, even before we knew that, gravity is not a force, there were thousand different theories about it. And then there's just one of them which feels right. Again, whether it is right or not, theory of relativity is right or not is another question. String theorists would say something
Another
else.
branch, and that's just endless branches going around,
Yeah. So me
conspiracy
saying that
thoughts.
it is all crap is me being extremely confident that I know for sure that it is crap, and me saying that it's true is me being extremely confident that I know for sure that that thing is true. That theory actually adds up, and no one knows which one of those two
Yeah,
are the
which one
correct
of
way to
it's
go. So
the same thing as you said, Russell's teapot. There exists a teapot.
yeah,
I know it. You don't know it. So, but
well,
I'm
it's
right.
not Russell's teapot for so Russell's teapot is very vague, right? Russell's teapot is saying that you know there's a pink hole which exists, or there's a orange hole that exists, or
That
there's
you
a
cannot
blue
see.
hole that exists, and I am saying it exists. This follows this mathematical equations, but what does that even mean, right? It doesn't make sense. Uh, that is what Russell's teapot would be. What wormholes are mostly like the extrapolations of what we realized when we saw that okay, black holes exist, which we never thought would exist in the first place. And when we realized that okay, things like this also are there, then we started to think of what else can be there. So that's how wormholes came. So it's not really Russell's teapot, but it's still very vague for now to comment on. Black holes would be very vague to comment on just 20 years back, but now they
Yeah.
are not.
Now they are not,
So
with the proof that we
you
have.
can never say anything. Well, we knew that there are black holes. from the time of Einstein, we saw all those
Hmm.
eclipse stuff, but we never actually photographed it. It could have been something else. It could have been something very different. Never actually listened to black holes colliding. We mathematically found the curve, and that fitted the
Curve and
practical
that.
curve, and
Yeah.
that's just extreme proof of what black holes
Hmm.
are.
Hmm.
So maybe this can change in 20, 30, 40, 100 years,
And
and
then we'll be
there
having
might be
another
something,
podcast कि यार देखो उस टाइम पर मैंने ये बोला था आज
if we are
ये
alive till
कुछ
then. Sure. But
that's a big
yeah,
question,
things happen.
but yeah. Also, this also makes me come to a point where I would like to ask you if you were like to give a advice to some of your juniors or maybe to the junior you in 15th or 16th whenever you were
Okay,
in that age,
I really feel
what would
giving
that
advice
be?
to, so
Not an
giving
advice
advice
but
to,
just a push कि ये करना चाहिए था या
yeah,
फिर
so
ये
think
कर
about
सकते
it
हो.
now. Yeah, think about it now. Me giving advice to, okay, I can give advice to maybe other people, but me giving advice to myself is rubbish. Like, now think about it. If I didn't do that particular thing at that particular point of time, I wouldn't have been sitting with you right now. I would be maybe I would have been maybe a billionaire, or I would be even I wouldn't even be alive. Anything is possible. So changing what happened is just senseless. There's a speech by you know Steve Jobs. There's a speech by Steve Jobs, I think at Stanford, where he exactly mentioned that this particular thing, that you can only connect the dots by looking backwards. So when you see what where you are, you can only realize how you came here by looking backwards. If you change anything in those dots, then the connection doesn't go the
That
same
the
way. It
connection doesn't.
changes.
Yeah,
So
that's
it
an
doesn't make sense
interesting.
to give advice to anyone, like my younger self. It doesn't make sense for me. But for juniors, I would say, try out stuff. It's a cool world to be in right now. You have like 10,000 things happening, out of which you just know two or three. So there's like 99 9,000 or so things which you don't even know exist, and maybe you can. And then this is a popular belief that we have a lot of people specializing in everything, but you do enough efforts and you can easily be
The
the
best
person
among the.
who, uh, there's easy to find niches, right? It's easy. There'll be four companies doing exact same thing, then there'll be just one company which only serves that particular niche, and only that company will be known by that niche. It's easy to catch the niches. So
The niches,
you
yeah,
might
and
choose
then
not to
start
go.
working on it
You might
endlessly,
choose
and
not
then.
to become a generalist. Like you might
Hmm.
feel like, no, you should become a know-it-all person. You should become someone who knows this also, that also. You excel in coding also. You excel in academics also. You do startup also. You get a job in Google also, or any other MNC also. That's not possible, right? That's not possible. You have to realize that you'll have to kill a few things in order to be good at other few. And that's, if you realize that, then I think you'll find your niche. And it's pretty interesting. There'll be a few people in your batch who will know insane amount of stuff in cryptocurrencies. They'll know insane amount of stuff about, let's say, handling just the cameras, or handling,
Hmm.
let's
Hmm.
say, a telescope. This might seem useless to you right now, but the time they spent handling a camera, sometime will give them something back. And
Something back, yeah.
you,
Efforts don't go
that
in vain. Somehow, some or the other, how it adds up to the experience that we are having.
efforts do go in vain. That's something I
But
feel.
it adds
Efforts
to the
do go in vain.
experience.
There's no point of having an experience if it just doesn't add up, right? But the point
Hmm.
is, if you really become good at something, then you know that this is something which, okay, let's see it from the other side, right? Uh, a lot of people click photographs, right? Now, if you know something, you know how to click photographs very well. Now you also know how to code. You also know how to manage finances. You also know how to do three other things which all the generalists also do know, but they don't know how to click good photographs. That's where you change a lot of things. You create something which only you know how to do that.
That's great. That's great piece of advice. And so with that, concluding this session, thank you so much for agreeing and coming on the podcast.
I, I
Hope
was
this
anyways
helps a lot of people.
extremely
Like
free.
we just discussed so many domains within this span of time, and it was really fun. So thank you so much
It
for
was pretty
coming.
long too. Yeah,
It was really
great.
really long. So thank you so
It was
much.
like, really fun being on this.
तो यार अब यहाँ तक आ गए हो तो आई होप आपको वीडियो पसंद आया होगा. अगर आपको कोई और कॉन्स्पिरेसी थ्योरी पता हो, यू कैन कंसीडर राइटिंग डाउन इन द कमेंट्स बिलो. अगर आपको कुछ नया पता है तो भी आप लिख सकते हैं. व्हाट आर द न्यू टॉपिक्स दैट यू वांट मी टू डिस्कस ऑन द पॉडकास्ट विद सेवरल गेस्ट, यू कैन राइट दैट डाउन. प्लीज़ गिव इट अ सब्सक्राइब बटन, नोटिफिकेशन ऑन कर लो यार, जब भी आएगा वीडियो पता चल जाएगा. टिल देन, पीस आउट.